would love to introduce Mr. William Still here. And Bill rather, is an author of a couple of books. And I had the pleasure of reading these books. The first one is Ghislaine, Sensational and Impure, about Ghislaine Maxwell. The second book is Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. And I've actually read both of them. Mr. Bill also has a show on A&E channel. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's pretty entertaining. It's called Inmate to Roommate on A&E. I binge watched that and had a few laughs, and got to see some first accounts of what it's like on that show. And you also have a true crime podcast on your website, williamstillauthor.com, and YouTube channel. And if there's anything I left out, feel free to fill it in.
I have 2 upcoming books, and yes, I do have some books out. And the reality show Inmate to Roommate was about me getting out of prison, getting on my feet, coming from New York City, living in the Midwest with some people that I didn't know too well. They're very over-the-top religious Seventh-day Adventists, and I'm a Christian, but their rules were a little over the top for me. And as you saw, some of the clashes with that. It quickly rose up to become one of the top reality shows, if not the second rated in the country in its first season. So since then, I have been offered other roles in movies and possibly another show as well. So things are looking up. The same week that came out, or around that week or two period, I was in the National Enquirer twice. I've been in the Sun, the New York Post, and so there's been a lot going on. I've only been out of prison probably a little over a year, and everything that I kind of planned for and was writing, I want to start my true crime channel and work in crime victim advocacy and advocating for those that are wrongfully incarcerated. I do that also, but I wanted to do that anyway. So the books and the TV show have given me the opportunity to get a much bigger platform and tons of fans, and I'm very grateful for all of them. And I think I pretty much covered where we are today. So we're trying to build up the channel, which is William Steele True Crime on YouTube, and we're trying to build up the podcast, William Steele True Crime. And I'd appreciate you guys to follow, subscribe, like, and I think the descriptions and the links are in the descriptions. And so that's my story. So it's nice to meet you, Laura. I know you have a interesting background yourself, so possibly different sides of the law, but anyway, it is what it is. On my show, I interviewed a retired ATF agent, as you know. So he's Ignacio Esteban, and he's phenomenal. He's written 52 books in a year. So he's incredible. He's one of my top guests, and we do a lot of stuff on true crime. We're looking to have crime victims on and try to help shed light on some cold case murders and some other cases.
That's really great. I have a legal background and work with victims, help victims, and I really appreciate you doing that, because a lot of people see it as a thankless job. It's really not. And there are a lot of cases and victims that go unheard, but because of platforms such as yours, they'll have a voice that they otherwise might not have, or maybe they couldn't travel to court to make their statement. So that's really important, and I'm thanking you and Mary for doing that, because a lot of times they just want to be heard. They know they might not get the money back if it was a financial crime. They know that they're a different person after the crime. So being heard is really important, and I'm just thanking you personally for that, because it's really important that they're heard. And I actually found you on Rumble because a lot of times Facebook and Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook, are censoring certain pages and certain topics, and this kind of topic about these true crimes are sensitive in nature. And I went to Rumble and I found you one day, and being an investigator, I was like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Out of the woodwork. And very well spoken, very almost entertaining. I hope you take that as a compliment, but really interesting person, and really, really, really colorful background with a lot of colorful experiences. So I read your book first. I read your book about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. I say Epstein. I think that's the German way to say it, but
Epstein.
Epstein. Yeah. So if you don't mind opening up with how you ran, I guess, how did you meet them? For those of those that haven't read the book, how did you meet them? And then how did that develop into what it did? Just a rough timeline. Was it a couple of years? Was it a couple of months? Was it on and off? And then kind of how it finished off, and more importantly, how you felt when you were around them, when you realized that they were dangerous people.
Okay, I don't know if I can remember all those questions that you rolled into one.
Sorry.
I also know a lot of what you asked is in the book, so I'll give you, the bullet points, I guess. So years ago, I was a jewel and art thief, and I was doing all the wrong things. We're talking over 20 years ago, and there came a point in Palm Beach where I was at a fence. A fence is somebody, as you know, who buys stolen property, stolen jewelry, whatever, and without paperwork. And on in Palm Beach on Worth Avenue, it's sort of like Los Angeles Rodeo Drive. There's a lot of high-end jewelry stores and stuff like that. So a friend of mine owned a second floor diamond salon, who I'm not going to name him, but it was very prominent, very well known location and store, for people in that stratosphere of wealth. And he actually was one of my fences. I would go in there with, whether it was $10,000 or $200,000 worth of stolen jewelry. Usually I'd go in there, I would have a gun on me. I wasn't necessarily using guns, but I had guns. And at that time, I like to have silencers on them for the intimidation effect and all that. And I had them in a briefcase, and I was pretty much a loner. I was running cocaine, I was running guns. And I found that if I was pretty much a loner, I was subject to getting, robbed or killed doing what I was doing. And I didn't really trust having partners. So I'd always have a gun with me. And usually I was well dressed, and I would just open a briefcase and the gun's sitting there. And, sometimes I'd have a police scanner, whatever, lock picks, for my different things that I was doing. But if you go to a jewelry store, you're dealing with people that are in drug trafficking, and they see certain things. They think you're dangerous or you're capable of doing something to them, just like they would do to you. So it was more for like an image. And so I was in the store, and I had pretty much everything with me. I was wanted by the police for something at that time. I don't know. I had more than one instance where I was wanted. But so I was going in there to sell my friend some jewelry. And at the counter across from us behind me was a guy with his hand down the back of somebody's shorts. It was a young lady. She looked underage. And, I explained what happened in the book. I now know this individual to be Jeffrey Epstein. So he, I guess was oblivious that I was there or forgot I was there. I don't even know if he noticed me coming in. I do think I had to be buzzed in at the time, but so either he forgot or was just thinking I was focused on the jewelry because I was acting like a customer, but really I wasn't a customer. I just told my guy, I'll wait till you're finished, with them, and I'll be over here. So she looked like if you know the movie Taxi Driver, like a Jodie Foster. She looked like a Jodie Foster from 13, 14 years old, maybe 15 max. And it was just inappropriate. And, so I was getting really pissed off. And when he left, I just stalled around and I told my friend, hey, tell you what, I'll be back. I'm going to go grab lunch. I'll come right back. But I wanted to follow this guy and see, who he was and, confront him about this. But I had to do it in a way that was cautious because I did have a gun on me. I was wanted at the time. And so I didn't want to make a scene. And, there's a lot of things not really in that crowded environment that could have been done to him at the time. But, so I just figured at least confront him, terrorize him, gunpoint, and get to the bottom of what was going on. So I did that, and that's outlined in the book. You said that you read the book. So I followed him to a restaurant. We had a little confrontation in the restaurant, and he pretty much backed down, and we ended up exchanging numbers. They made some excuse of why they were doing what they were doing, which really wasn't plausible because, the excuses they were making. But so that's how I came to know Jeffrey Epstein, because I confronted him. I followed him out of the jeweler, so I confronted him in a restaurant called Taboo at that time. And that's how I met Jeffrey Epstein. That's my first encounter with him.
Okay. So how did that lead into meeting with, is it Ghislaine?
Yeah. Well, I never knew how to pronounce her name. So I'm a Brooklyn guy, and it's a French name, and so I used to butcher it, and I would just start calling her G. And so how I met her was Jeffrey would buy jewelry from me occasionally because when I confronted him, I reminded him that there was videos in the store. He didn't obviously know I was wanted or anything, and I said, "My buddy owns that salon, and I could easily get those tapes, and turn them over to law enforcement." But I shouldn't have said that to him because who knows if he went back there and bought the videos for that day or whatever, had them erased because he may have known him as well, just as well. He was acting like he didn't really know him that well, but he was a Palm Beach resident and I wasn't, and I was wanted and he wasn't, and he was a billionaire probably even at that time, and I wasn't. So I was figuring no matter how this played out, I'd come out on a short end of the stick because nobody's going to believe me over this guy, and anyway, I started going to his house. I sold him some jewelry. Then he was told me he had a lot of models and masseuses that would come around, and I saw a lot of traffic, and I didn't feel comfortable there because the people looked young. It didn't seem it would seem weird. Like if I was there, people might disappear, and I would just leave. And he asked me if I wanted a massage, if I wanted one of the girls to give me a massage, and I said, no, I'm good. It just got a really uneasy vibe, and around him there was a very uneasy, like I think you called it an energy or something when we spoke previously, or just an aura of something really wrong, or as you could say evil with this particular guy. There was more than what was on the surface with him. Now, as we know now, he was probably well connected with intelligence agencies with various countries, and very powerful people. And between his own depravities and we know now, attention to young girls, it's understanding now is that he was running a blackmail operation personally where he was able to blackmail very affluent people, but he was also getting material for various intelligence agencies from overseas and probably our own. I don't know. If I did know, I wouldn't concretely say it like this because I'd like to live another day and enjoy my freedom that I have
Yeah.
left. So, I don't want to be on anybody's victim list because a lot of people who bring this stuff up are really getting to their details that they know, turn up mysteriously dead. As we know, some supposedly hung, some, supposed heart attacks. There's all kinds of substances that they can give people. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, it's just reality. You're dealing with very, very, very well trained, dangerous people, you know, and they don't want this stuff exposed. So, anyway, so let me see, where were we? Coming to the house a few times. I eventually met her. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but he had introduced me to her. She seemed very arrogant at first. And then I would go over there, and a time he was rare that he was never there. But there was a time when he wasn't there, and he's supposed to be back soon, and something was going on that she was upset about. And we just hit it off. We started becoming friendly, and then I don't know if he put her up to it because I never bit when he invited me to get massages from these girls and all that, and because I just felt uneasy there. I didn't know this was going to explode the way it did, and I certainly wasn't going to you know have a massage from somebody that I really thought was possibly underage and something weird was going on. So
Yeah.
I just always refused. Well, and there came a point where like I think he used her sort of like bait and then one of her assistants. And so her and I messed around, whatever, we did a few things. And then that turned into, me and her and another assistant, who I'm not going to name now because she's not charged, but I know exactly who it is. And so we had those things, but then there was times when she would want to invite, somebody else to the bed or try to encourage me to get a massage. And I was like, no, I said, you guys are, I don't know what else you're into, but it doesn't seem
Yeah.
cool. Like, I'm open minded to certain things with adult women, but I'm not going to mess around with underage girls, even questionable age girls. So, it was always, but I think he was so resentful because I had pulled a gun on him that first day, really very discreetly under the table, almost like what happened with the Durst situation and other situations. Um,
Yeah.
but I think he was so resentful that I put him in his place and that I told him there was video evidence of him touching this girl, that he was just looking for a chance to trap me too, like he did to so many other people. I'm street smart. I have good senses, good street smarts. I can read people pretty well. I was always told it should be a journalist or an investigator because I have a sixth sense and I'm always asking questions. And I just, even back then, I was living a very illegal lifestyle, and I don't brag on it, but I was very aware of my surroundings, hyper vigilant. I could read people. I stayed to myself. I was just always on alert for police or whatever, or bad guys looking to do something harm to me. And it didn't smell right. I was in it for what I could get financially at the time, and then she made it more interesting at the time. I was a young guy, so but I never fell into any of the invitations that I had. And at that time, I felt that things were like totally under surveillance and like hidden cameras. Although I was in the business for a while of doing surveillance cameras and locks and alarms and stuff, I don't remember that I ever actually saw any ones that were hidden, but I'm certain there had to be pinhole cameras or something around. I think years later they found out that there is, and there was like a whole recording room in that house. I never saw it. And for the record, and all the people that believe in conspiracies, I never saw tunnels in that house and all that stuff, pedophile rings and people coming and going. What I saw was always very well regulated. You had to be led into this house. They wanted to log everybody down. I told them if I ever find out my name's on the log, I told them I would kill them and all this stuff. But, so everything's very well regulated. I didn't see like this ongoing party very blatant in your face, but the vibe and the size of this place made it to where years later, when I saw what was going on in there, I could see how they got away with it for so long. Between their money, I think they were throwing money at investigators, and they were getting tips as to investigations in South Florida. I mean, look what happened in the end. In the end, he got convicted, I think, 18 months in the stockade, which I was in the Palm Beach County Jail for almost 3 years. I had a nonviolent charge, but I never made it to the stockade. That was like heaven to be out there. So how does a pedophile, excuse my language, we wouldn't want to get you thrown off the platform, but how does somebody that's into minors get a sweetheart deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office? I don't know if you ever saw his non-prosecution agreement. If he took that plea for the county time, like dozens of other charges were going to go away, and it covered his non-prosecution. If he took the state charge, the federal charges and the other state charges they were going after were not going to be prosecuted against him or any possible or likely co-conspirators, which of course absolved, Ghislaine, many other people at the house, a college professor, a former president, the Clintons. I mean, it absolves everybody, including allegedly, but I saw certain things later. If you read the book, you'll see exactly what I saw there on video. And I didn't even name all what I saw, what I could prove. But, it's alleged that some of the people that actually drafted this plea agreement, the lawyers, the dream team that he hired, God knows what, 20 million, who knows, were some of the same people that are on video with minors. So these were self-serving, self-dealing plea agreements protecting themselves, because all known and unknown co-conspirators were going to be absolved. They were going to have immunity for prosecution if he pled guilty to, I think it was 1 or 2 state charges of soliciting prostitution. Well, you can't solicit prostitution from a minor, because a minor, there's no consent. It's always rape. So it was
statutory rape. Yeah.
It was an illegal plea deal from the beginning. I learned all this stuff, of course, later, about the deal and the nature of how deep this went. But if you think about it, how smart are all these lawyers? And one of them, who's a huge college professor, super famous guy, who I admire his legal skills, but he's let me not say what he is really, but how can you draft this plea agreement for this man and say, and it's a plea that encompasses all known and unknown co-conspirators, and yet, unbeknownst to him, it's all over with years later. He's flying in from France into New Jersey, and they arrest him again, New York FBI office. Now, it's my understanding, and you probably could check into this quicker than I could ever find out. It's my understanding it's the public corruption unit of the FBI New York City field office that went after him. Why? Why public corruption office? Because guess how many politicians and former politicians were on these videos? So you tell me why that particular squad is on him, unless it was a throw off, just to not put the normal type of squad on there because they were afraid of his money might be able to pay somebody off in New York. So they arrest him in New York. He goes to jail. The first thing he screams at the bond hearing or whatever pre-detention, what do you call it, pre-trial detention hearing, is wait a minute, the lawyers are screaming, he had a absolute immunity deal for taking his plea in Florida. Well, as you know, the federal system's made up into districts. His plea was only the Southern District of Florida, which I think is like maybe Florida or 3 states or something. It only encompassed that very small area. It didn't
Yeah, that's
encompass
what,
it.
that's what I was going to ask you. Which district was it? Because even within Florida, there's different districts, and one
Okay,
does not cover the other. Yeah.
so he had a deal that encompassed down there where they should have, if they were going to do a deal like that, these brilliant guys that they think they are, they should have did one that encompassed the entire United States, and he would have never got charged or, ended up dead in jail. But they said, no, your deal was very specific. It was for down there only. We're the Northern District. We know you committed crimes up here too, and they arrested him. Well, he was dead a few days after that, I guess, after the bond hearing, right? He realized he wasn't going to be able to bond out, and, but so these are the people that are doing these things. They're running so scared. I don't know the entire nature of the case in New York. I know when they went into a safe there, from what I read from media accounts, that there was safes full of more images of inappropriate aged people doing inappropriate things with adults and prominent people. So there was passports, I think, under different names. This is in New York. There was, many, many diamonds in there. The guy's super wealthy. He's a billionaire. You expect him to have wealth stashed around the house, in case something happens. But evidently there was images there too that they found when they raided the house. I think they were in his New York mansion for a day or two, searching it. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough. And just from what I know, generally public corruption unit is normally involved if there's public corruption, whether and generally they're going to do that and investigate that if there's some kind of lead or some kind of evidence or even a spin-off from another case. I wouldn't think that they would open up a whole new case if there's not enough to do that with the resources being used up when there's a number of public corruption in that district, in New York or and potential, and that they wouldn't waste resources on going down a rabbit hole that's not going to come up with anything. But like you said, we can we can't say for sure, but we can guesstimate that there were a number of officials on these additional recordings. I 100% agree with you that I think he was secretly recording not just you, but everybody and everything he could, in all of his houses at all times with secret cameras, to include the bathrooms and whatever, everywhere.
I have nothing to worry about as far as anything inappropriate. It would be embarrassing, but it was always with adults. It wasn't with minors, So even if I am recorded, yeah, that would be a little uncomfortable. But at worst, it's probably some agents looking at it. Hey, who's this? This guy.
Yeah.
I don't think it was age inappropriate if she was probably at the time, I don't know, 40s or something, 30s, 40s. So.
Yeah. So it's just amazing that you have all these firsthand accounts, and that's priceless. It's one thing if someone is a journalist or investigating the case and putting together pieces of news releases and pieces of court hearings. It's another thing when somebody has a first account of these people. It's just amazing and it's priceless. So I really appreciate all of that and all your feedback on that, because this is not something that I looked up, just however you say her name, Ghislaine. I think there's at least five books or more on her, and I don't think any of those other books are first-hand accounts like that. They really knew her. So I guess well, it sounds like initially you knew how he was, but how long did these relationships last? I guess between the two of them, are you talking a few years, a few months, or on and off?
Between who?
Between Epstein and Maxwell. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to go to probably more like news accounts for that information. My understanding is just from some of my research to flesh out my book, because I had to put some just publicly known stuff to refresh the reader about who these people were. I think when her father died or before he died, he introduced her to him, or something like that. He was a crooked guy who stole from a pension fund in Britain. He owned the Mirror. He owned the New York Daily News at one time. Robert Maxwell, and my understanding of that research was something like around that time of his death, which I think was 91. Which is long before I knew these people. Um, that's how they came to be together. And she had confided to me that she was, her father had did things to her, and basically instilled in her to do whatever your man wants. If you want to be with somebody, and so she saw a kindred spirit in him because she was willing to do whatever, including help get young girls for him. Um, and that's my understanding of this later. Of course, I didn't know the whole dynamic and psychology of these people then, but I think they've been analyzed to death at this point. Um, a lot of things you don't realize is that when I left that house, if you get into detail in the book, I left with stuff that's absolutely, I believe, incriminating. I saw videos that had prominent people on it. I was able to, my last time there, leave with a lot of stuff, and I got it to two different agencies. That stuff seems like it's been buried. So I was reliving a lot of this, and I've been through counseling for this years ago. So there's documentation about that. Um, I didn't want to sue. I just wanted to write this book and really help the victims because even though I was an adult, I look at myself as a everything was consensual until it wasn't. If you read the book, at
Hmm.
one point I was restrained by Ghislaine, and I didn't like what was going on at the time, and I was saying stop, stop. So my understanding that's no longer consent. But my thing wasn't saying, hey, I'm a guy and I was with this threesome, but then when it turned bad, I wasn't with it. No, I was restrained and trying to get the hell out of there, and I was being threatened to do something for her, a favor for her, which is in the book, which you know what it is. Um,
Yeah.
that if I didn't do it, they were going to turn me in, and I was, how am I going to win this? I had a warrant at the time. They knew that I was, doing burglaries, and they knew that I had stolen jewelry all the time. They knew that I had cocaine, you know, and my history, and how would I? Okay, I'm in a Palm Beach mansion with people who have no criminal history, and all I got to do is say I broke in and ripped her clothes off or whatever, just some false
Yeah.
accusation. Even though they had security there all the time, they had bodyguards type people in the house, so that really wouldn't be plausible. But who knows if I would have disappeared? Who knows if they would have said he came in through an open window somewhere. So I told her anything she wanted to hear just to get untied and put her guard down and leave. And then when I had a chance to leave, I left with what I left with. Um, to my knowledge, that's been suppressed. But to help the victims, I've been in touch with some of the victim rights attorneys over the years, and they all consider me a victim. And I said, and they've given me information. They want to sign me up as a client, and I respect what these guys are doing. But no, I want to help this. I want to help the females understand that there was people there that are willing to speak up, that saw certain things that didn't sit right with them. I was never in a position to prove it or stop it, and except for what I did to try to get some evidence out of there. But I was never in a position. I didn't participate. I was never in a position to stop it. I never participated in it. But I think they have a right to other people, put on their a little bit of common decency and tell their stories about what went on there to help them get some maybe closure or some resolution with these cases. But it's pretty much resolved. I mean, she pled. My understanding is she's probably going to cooperate and try to make a deal. I mean, in the feds, they have this, Rule 5K1 and a Rule 19 and all these
Hmm.
provisions for cooperation. And I think she's still eligible for one of them. So that's why the Clintons and some of these other people are running scared because um, I don't like to name too many people, but in their case, I mean, they're both on video. That's just all there is to it. And
Yeah.
if those videos get out, if she still has them, they're done. They're done. I don't care if he was president or who she is, if she's running for president. They're finished. So I'm not going to go into detail here, but it's also one of the things is the people that have interviewed me before, telling me, "Oh, be careful, you'll be the next one found hanging and all that." Because of that, I have cameras on me deliberately, 24/7, more than one tracking device, 24/7, and I'm in touch with people that are aware of the danger I face in coming forward. So I'm very, very careful about how I'm trying to handle this. I'm trying to make sure I stay in the spotlight until this is behind everybody, and that's probably not going to happen until I would say after the presidential elections because um, I'm not a big fan of any real politician. I do lean more towards Trump, although he's done some inappropriate things, said some inappropriate things.
Yeah.
Our country was in the mess it's in now, but I think this will be coming up again and again up until the elections. And if the Justice Department does the right thing, she'll be charged long before then, so it doesn't become a controversy. Oh, you're just doing this to mess up my chances. I
Yeah.
think I think people overheard her husband a long time ago, regardless of where this goes. But my understanding is there's more people, likely going to be charged.
Yeah, that was a big question for me. But before I ask about that, did you by chance copy any of this evidence, or did you just kind of turn it in because you were done after and traumatized after everything that went down?
I was done and I was wanted. I didn't want it around me, and I knew
Yeah.
better than to have possession of anything like that. Would have been another big disaster for me to try to how to explain that. And this is at a time before they were charged, and that was
Yeah.
a time just before they were charged, which she was indicating to me she knew there was some heat coming. And one of Glenn's comments to me was that Jeffrey's going to be the death of her. So you take it from there, without me saying too much more. I do detail some of it in the book, but this was a time just before they were getting charged, and she knew something was coming. She said, "We have sources. We know what's coming. I need to take care of this problem." And she went from crying to threatening to like, for 2 days, I'm going through hell in this house, and I was glad to get out of there with my life. You might say it's a woman, but this is a desperate woman at that time. So hopefully one day she'll come public and tell the story about it. I don't know if she ever will. She's scared to death. These people are going to kill her. They know she's got video somewhere. She's got probably copies of this stuff somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, especially with the blackmailing going on and everything. I suspect that she
Mhm.
has a safekeeping copy somewhere, wherever, probably internationally or somewhere hidden,
I find it amusing when she knew they were going to come for her next, and he was dead, and they said she's in hiding, and to pretend she wasn't in hiding, she went and bought some bestseller book that's on in the bookstores now, a brand new book, and she was at an outdoor cafe. I think it was in L.A. I don't know if you remember the story, and
Yeah,
somebody snapped a picture, like a tourist or a paparazzi, and turned that over to the media. Oh, Ghislaine's not hiding. Look, here's the picture, right? This
yeah,
book just came out. She didn't want to be photographed, but she's not
mhm.
hiding. She's in a public restaurant on the sidewalk reading a book. Well, come to find out, I guess there's metadata or something in photographs these days.
Yes.
So somebody analyzed the photo and determined it came from her attorney's phone. So it was a staged photo to make people think she wasn't hiding when in fact she was already living at, what was it called, tucked away or hideaway up in Vermont or Maine or wherever the hell she was. And she had just
Yeah,
bought that property for like $1 million or $2, $1 million or $2 in cash under a very disingenuous, name to try to cover up her purchase. But I guess the FBI, they certainly know what they're doing. And between her phones, I guess voice printing and tracking and whatever else, they knew where she was. They at the entire time, from what I understand. So it's not like she was fooling anybody. I think when they got her, her cell phone was wrapped in aluminum foil because she saw something on the internet about wrap your phone, wrap your phone in aluminum foil. So not to
yeah,
be tracked, but they knew where she was. I think
yeah,
I've been in prison a long time, but I stay well versed in a lot of things. Try to stay up to speed. And I think if I disappeared and was hiding in Bangladesh and used the phone, and the FBI, CIA, NSA want to know where I was, my voice print alone would say he's using that phone at that address, like right now. They could probably just by voice print track you right to where you are. So you can't hide from many people these days. So
yeah. Especially with phones, even burner phones, and then once you're in the system and have your fingerprints and all that, that's forget it. Yeah, they have everything. But
mhm.
and some people do need to be tracked, like her. And so how long did all this go on? I guess with your relationship with her, like, are you talking years or months or?
On and off for a few years. On and off
Okay.
for a few years. It was rare that I would see her there, but times when I did, we hung out, and she'd want to pick out which bedroom. I'd pick out a different one because I figured if she was picking a bedroom, that's one that they were preparing to film in. So
Yeah, it's all set up with all their pin cameras and who knows what else. Yeah.
who knows? I got a little freaked out when I saw something about they actually did have her I think it was that house. It might have been the New York one where they had a whole room that was like nothing but a monitoring station for the house and all the hidden surveillance, including, like you said, in the bathrooms. So,
Yeah.
did you see the picture he had hanging on the wall in the New York mansion? It was Bill Clinton. I think he was in a dress and high heels. It was a gigantic picture, like 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide.
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, look
Yeah.
to Google like artwork found at Epstein's New York mansion. It was just hanging like in the living room along with a lot of other art, but it was Bill Clinton in a dress. Now, why would you
Um,
think this guy had it like that? Just like remind Clinton when he came over, I got you in that and worse. You know?
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely part of a blackmail thing.
The
And
Palm Beach house, when I was there, had pictures of young women all over the walls, artwork, photographs, everything. I mean, I'm pretty sure they recovered a lot of that too, and that was on the creepy side because you could tell they were young. So
yeah, I remember that in your book. And as far as the Clintons, I've actually heard on several other Rumble videos of, people that claim to have first accounts of like satanic ritual abuse when they were a child and whatnot. Other former presidents going back to the 80s and the Clintons were mentioned. So I think there's unfortunately a lot of truth in that, and I'm just hoping that this comes out and there's awareness to the public, that it becomes known to a point where some prosecutions are going to have to happen, and that there's overwhelming evidence to the point where they have to start prosecuting some of these, quote unquote elites, that were otherwise off limits until now with all of these surveillance videos. And now we have cell phones with videos, and uh, uh, most people have Ring doorbell cameras, and so I'm hoping that it's only a matter of time until some of these prosecutions of these elites start to happen. And yeah, so I
I,
think I
I, I,
think that's
I almost think that part of me is like it's way too deep, way too powerful, and it'll never happen. Something will happen to her in prison. They won't need her as a witness, so they was, oh well, she's dead. We can't prove it now. I hope it's going to happen, but I'm not optimistic. I just think it'll be a real travesty if these people continue getting away with it. And then the other one is screaming that she wants to run for president again. So,
oh God, yeah,
do
yeah.
you know the amount of murders that they are suspected of being involved with in Mena, Arkansas? You aware of that story when he was governor?
No, no, but I heard some other ones from the satanic lady. I think her name was Jessie somebody, but yeah, with how many in that one?
Well, in that case, he was involved with, my understanding, and allegedly, cocaine coming in from into Mena, Arkansas, and he was providing some kind of security and getting payments and weapons, I guess, for the CIA going out possibly to the Contras or whatever was going on at that time in the 80s, and that anybody that would come against him or try to bring Clinton down at that time would turn up dead, mysteriously dead. And there's a fascinating book called The Clinton Chronicles, which documents a lot of this stuff. There's a case allegedly where a guy had. Are you taking questions as well?
Oh no, I was just writing down the Clinton Chronicles so I don't forget
All
it.
right. So there's a case evidently where somebody was pardoned after spending time in prison, raping his niece or somebody related to Bill Clinton, and that he revoked the pardon, but not before the guy was kidnapped, had his stuff cut off, and then he was put back in prison. And somebody else who was accusing him of some kind of sexual abuse, and she turned up, I believe, dead. Her husband, who was some kind of, I think, homicide investigator, who was looking into it also, was found dead, ruled a suicide. I think at her grave, but his head was missing. So how's that a suicide? So I don't know these. I don't remember the stories. It's been a long time since I heard about them, but they have a trail of things, that they've been suspected of over the years, and nothing's ever come out of any of it. And everybody who comes forward, mysterious things happen to them. Vince Foster was one of the White House, I think, attorneys for them, the Whitewater scandal back in the day. And there was some corruption with that, money disappearing. And then I guess she was having an affair with him. He turns up dead. Somebody else, some department head that was going to go against him, his plane exploded in Africa. So, yeah, it's
Okay. So it's the tip of the iceberg of just actually other separate things that I heard from that.
More of the same, from what I understand. And I'm not a conspiracy guy. I just hear this stuff, and again, I have to say allegedly and suspected, of course, but I just don't get how these people have gotten away with all this stuff so long, unless they've done so many favors for intelligence agencies over the years that they can just keep getting away with whatever they want to get away with it, and everybody else is made to look like the bad guy or the criminal or liar or turns up dead, or you know, I don't have any credibility. What's my credibility? I was in prison. One of the victims was in prison. I think more than one became a drug addict, and she became a prostitute after being abused by these people. And I don't know what became of her. I forget which victim, but there was so many. So.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And a lot of the stuff has come to the surface. On top of the Clintons, I've heard the Bushes and some royalty family members from royalty.
Yep.
And you talk about one of those people in your book, and I won't mention his name, but I've heard that also. I guess on the circuit of alleged people. So I'm just throwing that out there, and I'm hoping that if there's any truth to any of that, it's at least stopped, but that some prosecutions start to happen again, because it's how overwhelming of evidence do we need to stop and prosecute these people. And I've heard you say on other videos and other shows that you did provide evidence, but that your circumstances were really sensitive at the time. You had a warrant. It's not like you were going to go befriend authorities and be buddy. And I understand by you saying that you're not going to copy everything, because you being in possession of those kind of videos are obviously going to implicate yourself. And
right. I was a law clerk in prison, so unfortunately I know the laws, and possess it for more than like a few minutes just to quickly give it to the police, you're guilty of possessing it. Period. Yeah. If you copy, you're guilty of reproducing it. So I didn't know what I grabbed. I don't know for sure that it was that stuff, but it sure looked like some of the stuff that he had been showing me on another occasion, and that they were boxing up to get the hell out of that Palm Beach house because of her own words that they knew they were under investigation at the time. So.
Yeah, I think it's highly likely that they were videos, especially if they're videos that have name of women or girls on them. I think that's a really high chance that they're incriminating, and that, like you said, the public corruption is probably likely a part of it, and that's why the New York district got involved, because of the gift that this area of Palm Beach gave him. And I'm not an attorney. I don't claim to be anything like that, but I'm an investigator, and I'm not sure how a plea agreement for non-defendant parties can be included in, a group. Like,
I think the wording is all known and unknown co-conspirators, so there you go.
I didn't think that was a thing. That sounds made up, and it sounds like immunity for non-defendants, which to me doesn't even sound legal. But hey,
because allegedly, which even though I saw the videos, allegedly some of the very ones drafting it were actually involved. So
yeah, there you go. So making up their own rules. So
self-serving, self-dealing plea agreement.
Yeah, because I'm guessing that a lot of these close employees of Epstein, like being his attorneys or CPAs or whoever were helping him with the business dealings, also went over to one of his mansions and enjoyed some of these massages, or whatever you want to call it. So I 100% agree with you that there's probably multiple of his employees, which a lawyer is his employee or was his employee. Now, as far as his death, do you think there was any funny business going on there? Of course, this is all speculation. And, conspiracy channels are saying they replaced him with a clone, and then he's off living on one of his islands somewhere, or something.
I don't know. With that kind of wealth, maybe he's hanging out with Bruce Lee, Elvis, and who else didn't die? They're all, another Elvis sighting. I don't have direct knowledge. All the thing I know is her intention, and she said she was not going to be charged with it if she can make it happen, was if Epstein went away and other ones got killed, Ghislaine wouldn't be, charged with anything. That was a guarantee from her, from a politician that we've just previously spoke about.
Yeah.
So I just, I don't know if he's dead. I know they wanted him dead. I know a lot of people wanted him dead. Having done time though, and that's a federal facility, which the one in New York City, MCC Manhattan, I'm familiar with the building. I've never been in it, but it has a history of problems like a lot of correctional facilities. They hire people that are poorly qualified and not really interested in working. They want to surf the internet. They want to sleep. I've been in many places like that where you're supposed to be on a closer watch, or they're supposed to keep coming by. They don't do it. Oh, the cameras were down. I was at a place called Wallens Ridge where I didn't believe it, but they said there was a lot of blacks getting beat up there. I got there and I thought the black guys were playing the race card until I saw it with my own eyes. And I apologized to some of them. I said, man, I didn't think this was still going on. I thought you guys, were playing the race card. Some of them are very good out there, but some of those officers in that prison, with my own eyes, I saw them like have people chained up hand and foot on their knees and then tell the guy to stand up. One would tell him to stand up, and the other guy would jerk the chains and make the guy crash down on his face and beat the hell out of him. And if you complained, you disappear, they kill you, leave you in the infirmary forever, no help, no family contact until you healed up. And so I witnessed things like that a few times. And I know these places, a lot of out of control things go on. Even though there's cameras everywhere, they'll swear the cameras weren't working on that day. Well, guess what? When Epstein worked, when he turned up dead, they said the cameras weren't working. They knew he was possibly suicidal, or that guy who was a former cop, he killed like 5 people. I forget his name. What's his name? Tartagliano, something like that. Anyway, he had told his attorneys that another inmate strangled him. He didn't try to kill himself, but there was suspicion he was suicidal, and he was supposed to be on suicide watch. My understanding in MCC, the federal holding in New York City, if you're on suicide watch, part of that program is another inmate who's trained is supposed to be your cellmate. So they do more frequent checks, rounds, and that inmate is also supposed to be, talking to you, counseling with you, maybe alerting the officers if you're feeling suicidal or whatever. And I actually had that role in another state when I was incarcerated. I helped guys, talk them down from suicides and stuff, because I was always on the offender representative committee. I was, working with the medical department, mental health department, chaplain's office, law library, and I was always trying to help guys get into programs or prevent them from hurting themselves. And so I know these things exist, but there's so many loopholes. I mean, I do believe, like, for example, that the cameras, how do they go down on the same day that one's doing nothing but surfing on the internet, the other one I think was sleeping? So was the whole building out that day? Because okay, maybe the floor where he was, cameras might have been out, but if somebody came in to kill him and then left, wouldn't there be something of surrounding businesses or in the street? Any video of a person that's maybe a non-staff member exiting? Like, who's that person? Like when they killed the journalist in the embassy, they had a guy look like him go out for the cameras to make it look like it was him, but they found out that the Saudi government had one of the assassins dress like him and walk out because they knew they were they're under surveillance from American intelligence or FBI or whatever. And but I don't know. I know they wanted him dead. I don't know who killed him.
Yeah. I suspect, highly suspect, some funny business that, especially since it happened like so shortly after he was incarcerated again. And that, there's probably technology that we're unaware of, like a silent poison that has no smell, no taste, you can't detect it. And who knows, something they could have used with some laser technology. You never know. You never know what they could have done.
There was a secondary autopsy. They said there's a bone, and when people hang, it leaves a certain mark, kills you a certain way. When people are strangled, either from behind or like this, it breaks. There's a bone here, hytoid, I think it's called, that'll always be snapped. In his case, it was snapped, yet the ligature mark was up here. And this one guy said, there's no way he hung himself. That bone was snapped, and that's only from somebody strangling you.
So, like blunt force trauma, like the squeezing or whatever.
That bone normally never breaks during a hanging because the ligature's up high. And that's where his marks were. See, if you look at the photography, that's where the marks were, up high, but the bones broke. This one guy did another autopsy. He said, "There's no way. There's no way."
Yeah, well, especially with another autopsy, we have a specialist looking at that, and it just appears to be, I have to say appears to be a cover up for some of these elite quote unquote people or royalty or whoever, politicians.
Mhm.
So I'm just throwing that out there because I wanted to ask you about that. Now, is he a clone and they did a clone body? I don't know if it goes that far.
Do you
I don't
think
know
we
if it
have,
goes that far. Yeah.
do you think we have human clones yet?
I think it's possible because I read there was a Chinese doctor in China, either cloning or attempting to clone humans, and they cloned Dolly,
Right.
the what is it, the sheep back in the
And
80s or
that was
90s.
that was in the 80s. Yeah. They
Yeah,
they
that was back then. So
they found something about the clones that the telomeres, which is your aging on your, I guess, your DNA, the telomere
hmm
pieces drop off. That your telomeres, if you make a clone, you're 50 years old. Your clone, even though it's a baby, the age of that baby is still 50 years old, and it will age a lot quicker and die. So the telomeres, they can't control the aging yet. So that even the clone is the same age as the original person. But I've heard that. I'm sure it's technologically possible, but I know they'd have to clone him pretty quick and get a double in there and grow a baby up to be his age. And it's just like Hitler. Was Hitler really killed? Did he really commit suicide? When they found the body, a lot of the things didn't match Hitler at all. The shape of the skull. Yeah, some of the clothes and uniform or whatever he had on were Hitler's. But then when they went to his socks, the toes were sewed together like somebody who had holes in their socks and sewed them. Well, come on, the
hmm
guy was a billionaire and leader of a country. Do you think he had socks that were sewed together? Just a lot of little things like this that you could just say, "Well, that was Hitler." They burned the body; it was badly burned. But I think the Russians have this skull, and they let somebody DNA test the skull, and it came back, I think, to a female or something. So, and then there's
yeah,
evidence that he made it by U-boat to South America. They scuttled the U-boat somewhere, and he actually made it inland with some other Nazis and hid out. Lived in South America somewhere for years.
yeah. I saw that, and I saw a documentary on that too. That like none of the dental records matched, and like you said, the skull didn't match, and yeah, DNA back then obviously was not, advanced like it is now, but you could still match the dental records and, the
Was that the
bone and
history,
like,
the History Channel special about him?
yeah, I think I saw that one
That
that
was
he
very
he was
well
seen
done.
in, yeah, in a U-boat like in South America,
That's
right,
right.
Argentina or somewhere. That there are people that are still alive that say, yeah, we saw the U-boats and, the Germans and,
They said 8 planes went out from the road right in front of his bunker. The street lights were there one day. They got photography of them. The next day, they were all cut down at the base, and
yeah,
that was the runway. I think 8 planes left with a lot of loot, a lot of expensive things, a lot of his top staff, and they went. I think was it the Canary Islands or somewhere by plane, and from there by U-boat across the ocean to South America, and they made it. So,
yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's highly likely, especially with all the evidence that they gathered there. And
yep.
so I think that's enough on the Epstein Maxwell. Unless you have anything else to talk about that, I wanted to move on about Robert Durst.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more, but let's save it for another day because there's certain risks involved. So, and also, well, I'm not going to say much more, but let's just hopefully the rest are coming soon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my big thing is that for a lot of people, and right now, that's something that we need for the rest to come. Some justice here, some real justice, because
Yeah.
those tapes are incriminating a lot of people, and we the Americans deserve answers on that and justice. So I really appreciate someone like you coming forward because it takes a lot, and you're reliving these experiences and your book and all that. So okay, so Robert Durst, honestly,
You say reliving them. You know,
yeah.
there was another interview I think it went a lot longer than this one, and I was really starting to relive it. And I was starting to get broke down. I had to stop the interview. As a matter of fact, that we were in Florida a few weeks ago, and I went to film at the mansion to do some footage for my channel and what I experienced at the house. So it's on El Brillo Way, which is in Palm Beach. And we drove down the street, and I was there years ago. I hadn't been there in almost 20 years, but except for the last experience with her. But so I go down there, and we've got the cameras, everything going, and it's it's a very super wealthy area. Nothing's under 50 million probably on the street.
Hmm.
And I go down there, and it's a dead end. And I tell the person I'm with, look, we have to do this really fast because the police, security, cameras everywhere. I don't want to be caught loitering around in Palm Beach of all places, especially with my record. What the hell are you doing back? Looking to hit some more mansions.
Yeah, yeah,
But I would say no. I have a true crime channel, and I knew these people, and I wanted to get some footage. But who's going to believe me? So we went down to the house, and there was a big privacy fence up, no trespassing, camera on the driveway, the same big square driveway, and I couldn't believe it. There was no house. The Palm Beach house has been torn down. I didn't know that. I went there to film, and maybe because a little time has elapsed, knock on the door and say, "Look, I was there, and I left something, in a closet on a wall. Can I please get in and just photograph that for the authorities?"
yeah.
And the house was gone, and so I nearly lost it that day. So yeah, it's pretty emotional. But I try to speed through these interviews so I don't touch on the raw part of it, like what happened to me that last time I was with her, because was pretty intense. So
Yeah, yeah,
got a lot of those.
yeah. We don't want to get into any like PTSD triggers, and as a veteran, I can say that I wouldn't want to do that to you. So I just appreciate the bit that you gave. And
Fly planes or something
um,
in the Air Force? What did you do? What did you fly?
no, no, I was a medic. So yeah, back
Oh,
then I was an Air Force medic. So for about 6 years,
you
but
go to Iraq or Afghanistan or anything?
no, I didn't deploy, but I was stationed in Alaska, out of all places.
Oh, wow.
Being from California, then I was at Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs has now a big part of the Space Command, with the satellite operations, and they have the Cheyenne Mountain there and all that. So they didn't have a Space Force when I got out in 2006. So I actually thought the Space Force was a joke until I looked online, because I try not to listen to mainstream news media, and most of the time I'm watching Rumble or something. But I was like, Space Force, that sounds fake. I'm like, I was in the Air Force, even I thought it was fake, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's not fake.
It was real.
So
It was real then, Space Command or something, and then Trump made it a branch of the military now.
yeah,
I
I know, I know. I was in the Space Command. I think it was the 21st Space Command in Colorado. So that's why I was like, I find that interesting, because
was
I
at a
was
local.
stationed there.
I was at a local hospital here by Notre Dame University out here in Indiana, where we're filming the show, and the hospital has all the branches of the military displayed their flags, except for Space Command. So I started lodging complaints. I says, "Wait a minute, why is that not up?" Because Trump came up with the idea, put the Space Command flag up there, whatever
Yeah.
it is, Space Force or whatever they call it now, Space Force. So
Yeah, it's a Space Force, and they should have a flag up there, because they're
right.
part of DoD military defense now. So yeah. Anyways, I thought that was funny. I thought Space Force was a joke, because I don't watch a lot of mainstream news on purpose, and I had to actually look it up, see that it's not a joke. It's real. It's a branch of the military. So that's that. So um, yeah. So like I said, hopefully there's some justice here, and secondary prosecutions. We'll see. I agree with you. I don't think a lot of that's going to go down until 2024 or so. Hopefully before then, we'll see. And now, as far as Robert Durst, I have to admit, I didn't know who he was. And I just saw the cover of your book said serial killer, which I generally don't think that a serial killer type can be rehabilitated, for example, like a white collar criminal. So if you can speak a little bit about your relationship with Robert Durst, and basically, who he was, and if you know any of his victims, how you're helping with that.
Okay, Robert Durst and I met in the early '80s. He was the heir to one of the biggest real estate fortunes in New York City, worth in the billions of dollars, called the Durst Organization. They control the World Trade Center complex, I think in management capacity, and they own much real estate all throughout Manhattan. A very, very wealthy family. Because of his bizarre behaviors and disrespectful behaviors to his family, he was cut out of the company and was given a severance of, I think, 60 or 100 million, whatever he left with. But all through the years, he's become known. A lot of people wouldn't say it public. I've been saying it as the wealthiest serial killer in American history. And the reason I know this is because he was always into having women, I didn't see any minors, but different women and things, freaky things he was into. He would be on coke, or I heard later meth and drinking, and he would be in hotels with them or whatever. And so back in years ago in the 80s, I was still dealing a little cocaine. Um, I ran across him, which I described in my book how I met him. It's called Sex and the Serial Killer: My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. My books are all written to try to help the victims and the victims' family members understand what happened, and to open the eyes of law enforcement about who these people really were. Now, if you notice in the beginning of all my books, I put a quote from Edmund Burke, and it says, "All that's needed for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." And so these are really written with the victims in mind. You'll see in the beginning of the Robert Durst book, I put Kathy Durst. Now, I am friendly with her family. They appreciate that I've come forward and put these things in the book, and that I've been giving interviews telling the stories about who he was. That on my own dime, I flew to his trial. I was only out of prison a few months. I flew to Los Angeles to his trial to try to attend. It was the middle of COVID, and support the victims. You couldn't even get in the courtroom without getting on a list first. And then I didn't know that. So I wasn't able to walk into the courtroom. But I saw one of his attorneys who started going off on me in the hallway for writing the book. But I got to be careful what I say about him because he's a very influential attorney out of Texas. But anyway, so he confronted me. I went and said hello to the prosecutor. He said, "Well, we didn't need you as a witness. And, I don't necessarily believe what you said." I said, "Guess what? You haven't spent 5 minutes to interview me or the people who do know me or ask for any of the evidence or where it's located. Because if you went to that spot, you'd probably find some things because that was hidden many years ago." So, I pretty much, he says, "Well, okay, whatever." He handed me back my book. Crime and Law and Crime Network was there. I think Court TV was there. So I was trying to go in. The bailiff would not let me in, but I saw Robert Durst sitting there in the wheelchair. So I write these for the victims. I spent my own money to go to California, not soon out of prison, And then when his lawyer came back to me after a recess and he went to apologize, we got some good video of him, shaking my hand and apologizing for yelling at me in the courthouse. He said, "How the hell did you get out here? I thought you were still in prison." I said, "I got released a few months ago. I'm not going to let this trial go down without showing my face and supporting the victims like I promised to do for all these years." So, he would sexually torture and kill women. He had pictures of dead women that he claimed to have killed. He killed his first wife, Kathy Durst. Her last name was McCormack before that. Again, I'm friends with some of her family members and they're grateful that I keep coming forward about this, but it's almost too late now to do much about anything because all these years, certain people were never listened to because he's so wealthy. He was able to prevent himself from being prosecuted in Westchester County, New York. One prosecutor after another gave the family lip service, wouldn't prosecute him there for killing Kathy, even though, that's where he needed to be prosecuted, was Westchester County, New York. But his brother, they all live there. They're the wealthy, some of the wealthiest people in that county, big contributors to everything going on there. And nobody was going to prosecute him for killing Kathy. Finally, The Jinx came out, the TV show The Jinx. He was so arrogant about getting away with all these. He did the documentary The Jinx on HBO, one of the biggest documentaries of all time, right around the time I was putting my book out about him. And he made some slip-ups on an unguarded moment. He was confronted about a letter, the handwriting, which matched his handwriting. He had a common misspelling for, I want to say Beverly Hills. I forget the exact word, but it was a common thing he misspelled and the way he wrote, the exact way he wrote. And so he had said that the cadaver of Susan Berman, a mutual friend of ours, who I met the day I met him, that there was a cadaver at a certain address in Beverly Hills because he didn't want her body decomposing after he killed her. So he was denied writing the letter all along. Well, 3 years before he ever admitted it at his trial in Los Angeles about a year and a half ago, 3 years before he ever admitted it, I put my book out saying he wrote the letter. He told me, and here's what the purpose of it was, blah, blah, blah. So he was saying he was never even there. At the trial, they suddenly announced he went to trial for killing Susan Berman, as you might know if you paid attention. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so he went to trial for killing her, and to his lawyers said, "Oh yeah, I was there, but because Janine Pirro was trying to get me in New York for killing, she was the prosecutor of Westchester County at the time. She was trying to accuse me of killing my wife. I knew that when I walked in and saw her dead laying there, I ran away and I called 911 and I left town." So the prosecutor, I'm not crazy about the guy, John Lewin, but he's a good cold case prosecutor. I give him credit for finally convicting this man. He finally pulled it off. He said, "Well, Susan was meticulous about documenting everything. We have all her journals and date books.
Yeah.
You're not scheduled, and you're one of her best friends. You just gave her 50 grand, 25 grand, but you're not scheduled to go over there. Was it impromptu?" And he said, "No, no, no. She wanted me to come. She said she wanted me to come for a staycation." So John Lewin had, I guess, his people look that up, and he says, "Well, staycation didn't even come into common use, to any kind of use until like I think 10 years after Susan was killed." So how did
Yeah.
was that her exact words? He said, "Oh yeah, she wanted to come for. She called it a staycation." He got on his, but anyway, he just got caught in so many lies on the stand. They finally convicted him. So then New York had no choice but to finally indict him for killing Kathy. Problem is, he gets sentenced to life. It's mandatory life in California for what he did to Susan. He murders a potential witness against him in New York, which is Susan Berman. He got life. And while he's in prison or at the jail, he caught COVID. They didn't even let him go to his own sentencing. He goes to prison. They show one or two pictures of him. He looks like a cadaver. He dies of COVID, I don't know, 8, 9 months ago. So under California law, if your case is under appeal and you die, you're automatically forever exonerated. So he right now has no convictions for any murder, anything. He's in death. He was exonerated in death of being convicted of killing Susan. And because of the foot dragging in New York, he was allowed to get away with the murder of his first wife, Kathy Durst. Well, in my book, I detail a lot of the crazy stuff he did around me, a lot of the things he said around me, did some of the recordings I made. And the family to this day has got no justice for 40 years. Kathy Durst's mother passed away, 100 something years old. They have no justice. His wife ended up with, I think it might still be in probate court or something. And was it in Houston or something in Texas somewhere, trying to get her hands on his money because she was married. But then there's allegations she was also married to the lawyer at the same time, a guy named Stephen Holm, who conveniently just passed away also. So she's fighting for this money. Well, the victims, Kathy Durst's family, are trying to get something from Douglas Durst and the Durst family for allegedly helping him cover up for Kathy's murder for so long, and encouraging him to do something about his wife because she turned in a bunch of documents proving tax fraud to I think it was Patrick Monahan. He was a congressman or something in New York to give to law enforcement to try to do something about these people. And because she was being abused and she was tired of it, and he wasn't giving her anything reasonable to get out of the marriage for divorce, like any kind of settlement, Patrick Monahan evidently gave it right back to Senior Durst and said, "Your crazy, daughter-in-law gave me all this trying to accuse you of tax frauds." And she was dead shortly thereafter. So you tell me the family is not allegedly implicated and covering it up for all these years. They have billions of dollars. They could have hired the best lawyers, PIs, investigators to track down every lead and find her. They didn't do much of anything all these years, and neither did the prosecutors. And as much as I might like Janine Pirro because she seems pretty decent, nobody's happy with her as connected to the Durst case in New York and Kathy Durst because she had many opportunities to prosecute him and she didn't bother doing it. So,
Yeah. That's really unfortunate.
yeah.
What about a civil case for those Durst victims' family members? Are you aware of any civil case or?
Yes, there's stuff pending now. I'm not sure if it's in the state or federal court. It's like for wrongful death. There was one for right of sepulchre, like for them to have the right to possess her body. They were going after him, suing that they had the right to know where her remains were. I don't know what happened with that case, but I know since his death, they have some stuff filed, and I keep asking them, to go more public with it because to me it seems like their lawyers just like or they keep doing press releases and getting themselves on TV, and I guess that gets them more clients. But I don't see them
Mhm.
helping the McCormick family very much. And I've been very vocal with that with them. I said, one, I have proof of some of the things he was doing. They don't call me. They don't call me at all. But they're constantly in front of the media, And then some journalists in Westchester who won awards for like investigative journalism, she rehashes old news like she broke the story. And I'm like, do you realize this journalist got the story from an old New York Post story that was out for years? And then she's pretending to help you guys. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not trying to get sued, but it's a shame what's been going on with the McCormick family. They've just been manipulated by the journalists and the lawyers and the system and the prosecutors, and they're not getting any justice.
That's unfortunate.
And
I hope they're a final. I thought I read online that New York was going to do some kind of final case on him. I guess finalize his case, even though he's passed away. Is that out the window because it wasn't started and he's already passed away, or did they start it? And do you think they're going to finish that just to have some kind of justice?
About civil litigation or something about his criminal conviction?
About his criminal, yeah.
Right. Well, under California law, if you have an appeal pending from a criminal case and you die during the pendency of that appeal, you're exonerated forever of that conviction. You're exonerated instantly in death. I think Massachusetts does the same thing. So now, where do Susan Berman's family members stand about suing him or anything else? I'd be glad to help them. I'd be a witness for them about the things that I know about, with him. That would help them probably in the civil case. For example, OJ wasn't convicted of murder. I think the whole world knows that he allegedly did it, But I mean, come on, he did it, But he got off the hook and didn't do any time. And the next thing you know, he lost a civil case because the burden on a civil case is for wrongful death is much lower. You don't need to have all this. I forget the standard of law, but it's a much lesser standard you have to prove to win a civil case. So he ends up having to pay the Goldman family, I think it was $60 million or something, which they'll probably never be able to pay off.
Yeah, plus you can't plead the fifth either. So OJ wasn't able to plead the fifth in the civil case. So that got him tripped up.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And then when I was in jail in Florida years ago, there was other guys who knew him from down there. And he was got some other domestic violence charge in Florida. Then he was selling years ago. They had cards. I don't know about the cards, but they were cards you could put them into your box and get like free cable or something. He was involved in a big scam to steal cable and sell these millions of dollars of cards to people. So he's constantly in trouble. And then of course the thing in Vegas got him 9 years, and he gets paroled. He got caught lying to the parole board. I watched the parole hearing. I was in prison when he went to his parole hearing, and I said, "Let's see how they do parole hearings in Nevada." And he got caught lying. Like, I've never had any confrontations. Sir, if you let me out of here, I've lived my whole life free of confrontation from anybody. I'm like, wait a minute. You have domestic violence convictions. You're accused of murders. Your
multiple. Yeah, not just one. Multiple. Yeah.
Yes. The girl had black eyes calling the cops on him all the time. And he's saying he's never had any allegations of any confrontation with people. And I live a calm life. And one or two other lies. He lied to them. And I'm like, okay, he's not going to get parole. Boom, I came right back and they released him. I was like, he just lied to you guys. Why would you trust him, to do the right thing when he gets out?
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
The wealthy get a whole different level of justice, no matter, what level it is, state or federal, it seems like, because they have the money to play the game the longest and to work the best deals or to pay people off to make cases go away or to reduce the consequences. I explained to you Charles Ray Smith out here. If he takes a plea and pays off a few people, I mean, I'll say it here like I've said it on my own channel. He's a suspected serial killer. He brags that he's a hitman. He has a phone full of dead bodies. The FBI is aware of all this. A lot of people say he's just bragging to scare people, but who knows? We know people personally that he has allegedly ripped off and have definitely turned up dead under very suspicious circumstances. So, including one that was a witness and informant against him, his girlfriend, Trina McCreary. So, and if he gets off with just white collar charges, I mean, I don't know. I did 18 years in prison for nonviolent charges and then walking off a work detail, escape. So if I can get that kind of time, and these violent guys, stealing millions of dollars, and then they're violent, and then people disappear, and witnesses are turning up dead. Oh yeah, we'll give him 2 years or 4 years, whatever it is. Let him keep his mansion on. What's wrong with our system? The balance. Even the McCormack family. That's their biggest thing, is that Robert Durst has been able to get away with multiple murders for years because of the wealth of his family, allegedly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and thank you for spotlighting the Charles Ray Smith case. I'm gonna check that one out too. And you're right about the white collar thing, and only doing certain charges. And from what I see, if they do a plea deal, it's a very can be a very lucrative thing for them. If they go to trial, then I've seen some white collar criminals go to prison for like 35 years, but I'm assuming that their attorneys would generally advise for them not to go to trial, because then everything but the kitchen sink will be thrown in there, all the 10 things that they did instead of just the little couple,
Right.
Things. Yeah.
He's looking at right now, when they picked him up because he was recorded, and it was played at the detention hearing, so I'm not giving away anything, but he was recorded making death threats against numerous people, a handful of people. I'm not going to say the exact amount, naming them by name, that he was going to kill them for going to the FBI against them, and that he already had this plan set in motion. He had people paid off and his alibi lined up. So they quickly picked him up. I think they hit him with one case. He was looking at 20 years. But when they picked him up, put him on his house arrest, they hit him with a slew of more white collar charges. As of today, he's on house arrest looking at 120 years. But again, he's probably going to be allowed to just pay off victims. None of the murders are going to be properly investigated. Now, it's my understanding 2 of them, there's a good chance he get charged with, and at least the one. And that they want to have people start going to a grand jury, to give evidence about that. But this is what goes on. It's unfortunate. I'm a nonviolent offender. I did 18 years. These guys, they're bragging about the people they killed, people they threatened to kill, disappear or die. Not much is done. It's unfortunate. The investigators on his case are phenomenal. They're fantastic. And they get it. They understand that a lot of these charges are up to the state level people to charge. And they keep saying there's not enough there. Well, in the case of Charles Ray Smith, he brags routinely that he's got many detectives on the payroll. And so the FBI and everybody looks at like, well, we've heard that, we can't prove that, or we're aware, then there's allegations he's about to cooperate against them, against the police that were helping him all these years. So they're probably running from him now. But, Dr. Scholl, who we're trying to help, he put him in prison. He entrapped him. We're trying to help him get his medical license back. Les Scholl. If you guys want to check him out, it's clear, Dr. Scholl. So Mary and I are, we're crime victim advocates together. Mary's my fiance. And, she's a certified fraud examiner, forensic accountant. I forget all her titles. She has so many. And she belongs to different anti-fraud organizations. And so, she's really on top of things, and she stands up for people. But it's just crazy. And I look back at my life and I'm like, how the hell did I get 18 years for what I did when these guys are like literally killing people and stealing millions, and they're walking? Yeah. And Mary would always tell me, people don't get it. White collar criminals, when they're thinking they're going to prison, they're more dangerous than the rest of them, because they're the ones that are cowards. They're scared to go, and they're going to try to make people disappear, witnesses disappear. If they can't pay them off, they'll try to kill them or kill them themselves. She always says the white collars can be way more dangerous than the other types of criminals. So, because they get more desperate and they're more scared of going to prison.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. Like you said, unlike a bank robber, for example, they're not used to like that kind of environment, so they're more scared about going, and will go to more extremes to stop that from happening and become a blue collar criminal as well, or maybe have done both and are only getting caught up with the white collar charges, like this Charles Ray Smith. And hopefully he gets a lot more than that, or goes to trial, because then with the trial, a lot of evidence comes out publicly, that you can order on transcripts and Zoom hearings and whatnot. And things, or attend the public hearing if you're local. So hopefully a lot of that comes out and he goes to trial, or breaks his plea.
He won't go to trial. He's a coward. He pretended to be my friend. He tried to draw me into one scam after another. First, he tried to rip us off. Then he flipped it around and tried to bring me involved with his scams. And I warned him repeatedly. I've changed my life. I have a true crime channel. I have a TV show. I write. I help victims. If you try me, I'm going to be. You're going to regret it, man. And he tried me anyway. He wanted me to go to my church and bring victims to him. He said, "You just introduce them to me." He said, "I'll let me do the talking." And I was like, "This guy has no boundaries at all. None. None." You know, I was just out of prison. I was kind of vulnerable. I didn't really know anybody on the outside anymore. I had a falling out with family over an inheritance. So yeah, sure, I was hanging out with this guy for a little while. I quickly caught on that he was full of crap. He was having a
Yeah.
private meeting with Bon Jovi. He's best friends with Garth Brooks. He's showing me texts that he's getting from Angelina Jolie and some other stuff I can't go into right now. But
Yeah.
he had all the accoutrements, and I've seen all kinds of bullshit in my time, and I just told him, I said, dude, if you're telling me lies, you're going to regret it. I don't mind your offer of help, but don't bullshit me. I'm not trying to go back to prison. I'm not trying to become enemies with you. We can be cool, but don't draw me into your dramas. I don't want to be involved. But he did it anyway.
Yeah. And you said that Dr. Les Scholl, was a victim of Charles Ray Smith, or is that something separate?
Yeah, he was a victim. He offered to sell him, I think, some property over $1 million. And then during a divorce, he somehow comes up with names of people that are going through high value divorces. That's another thing. He magically comes up with these people. But anyway, so Dr. Scholl was going through a divorce, but he was an avid gun collector, $300,000 in guns. Some of them were completely legal automatic weapons, silencers. And this guy, Charlie, was also a gun dealer of some sort. And he says, well, why are you going through the divorce? I'll hold them for you. But then he went and stole all this money from him and went over $1 million for a fake land deal. And when Dr. Scholl, who was busy working and earning an honest living and raising his 5 kids, said, look, this is all BS. I want my money back. He kept stalling him around. So anytime you threaten to go to the police on this guy, he tries to get you locked up. He constantly taking stuff out of his warehouse over here and trying to blame me and other victims for doing it. We're nowhere around at the time. He's doing it himself. He has his friends taking stuff out of there all the time, but he tries to say everybody else is doing it. But so this is what he does. He tries to get his enemies either locked up or killed. And then he was working with the FBI as an informant. They admitted that. I'm not saying anything that hasn't been publicized. In the Goshen newspaper, they put it right in there that he was working with them on the Dr. Scholl case. So, but then he wants to pose as a Hell's Angel to scare people. If you want your money back, whatever. I'm a ranking member of the Hell's Angels, and I just don't wear my colors. But in his bar, he had the Hell's Angels colors right there. So he has enough stuff to be convincing. But he's bad news. I don't know what's, you just look at the video we did about him. Mary even went on the local ABC News, explaining how he tried us,
Yeah.
It's just, that's incredible. He said he was running the 5 families or connected to the 5 families in New York. And yes, I know them all. And I'm like, really, dude? He used to send me tourism photos. Like he'd say he was going to New York or Vegas, right? And I'm in Vegas. Look, I'm in the desert. And the topography had saguaro cactus in it. Well, I lived in Vegas. They're not native to Nevada. They're like in Arizona or some New Mexico or something. So Mary showed me how to do reverse image searches. And then he said he was in New York and, oh man, you should have came with me. And he shows me a picture of Times Square, people walking in their shorts. No one has a mask on and it's big crowds. Now this was time of COVID lockdown. No one had a mask on, and then some restaurant. And so she shows me how to do all the image searches. And every one of them was a tourist photo for like Getty Images or something. Yeah. So this is the kind of person he is. He thinks he can fool everybody. He has all the sense. And, it caught up with him. He's been doing it for decades, and it all caught up with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And the image searches, I can do a drag and drop, and you can get metadata on those pictures to see, the year they were taken and possibly the place. And there's all kinds of things you can do. And I really hope that he gets some time, like you said, not like 2 or 3 years, but some kind of lengthy time. But if he sticks to his plea deal, he probably won't. If he gets released, early or whatever they do. He sounds like he's going to be a lot of trouble moving forward when he's in probation and supervision. But I'll definitely follow that one. I'm going to look up Dr. Scholl and
Oh,
the approach.
Charles Ray Smith is likely, in my opinion, and from what I hear here and there, is likely making a deal to testify against some dirty cops and his partner in Ohio. He's got a business partner out there. And, I told this guy he was removing a car. I said, the judge said at the hearing, we listened into the hearing because we get the access, and then I go to buy the disc of the hearing because you can buy the disc from a federal hearing. So we laid out money and bought the disc. He said, clear as day. I'm putting you on the supervision. You cannot go to your bar or garage, which has all kinds of exotic cars and motorcycles in it. He says, and you can't move. He didn't order him directly not to sell the assets or move them. He said, but there's up for dispute whether they're going to have to be used to be sold to pay victims. So I'll frown upon it very much if you come back to this court and I find out you've been moving assets out of that bar. There's all kinds of video of him moving assets out of that bar. He's sending friends over there to move stuff out. I talked to one of them one day when they were moving a car from like the 1920s or 30s out of there, big, like worth $225,000 almost, this car. And I told the guy while we were filming, I said, let me tell you something. I said, you're going to be in a prison cell next door to Charlie because the judge said he's going to frown upon him moving any of these assets. Not supposed to be touching anything over here. And he's, oh, you don't worry about me. You go get out of here, this and that, whatever. I hope you have somebody to post your bond. So.
Yeah, that's true. So especially if you have a video,
because they can
let the authorities know that assets are being moved. Because yes, those assets should go to pay victim and victim restitution down the road. And if he's pending sentencing, that it should not be sold or moved from wherever they're at. So you probably already told the authorities, but
Yes. He lies. He lies to everybody. He lies to everybody. He says he has permission to move them, but what he's doing is implicating them in money laundering and racketeering because they're continuing to help him move assets as money laundering. They know how he gets his stuff. Nobody's stupid. It's the game is caught up with him. It's time to either run away from him as fast as you can or run to the FBI and say, hey, how can I help?
It's one or the other.
He's just dragging them all down and they're just going along with it.
That's true. It's a big sinking ship. So I'm glad that you track a lot of these cases. And I kind of realized that you have a lot of run-ins with people involved in the cases I really think that you have a higher purpose with that. And that's why you keep running in with people like this Charles Ray Smith, because not only are you helping the victims, you're bringing a lot of awareness on your channel and your podcast. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So whatever you can share with us about your new books or books that are coming out, I'm assuming you can't release anything about your new show if you have a new show coming, but whatever you can talk about, I kind of wanted to end it off on a more positive note, because some of this subject is really raw, and we need to bring awareness around it. It's not to create fear or fear mongering. It's just awareness and to give, victims a platform and, to try to make things better for the world.
Exactly. I was with a lot of these guys in prison. I know how they are and how sneaky, horrible they can be. And, my fiance, is that our phone here?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, my fiance and I, we just really have a lot of compassion for people. And with my background and me being a law clerk, I can spot this stuff coming a mile away. And I have really like a sixth sense for it. Like some police officers have a gut instinct. I know when somebody's BSing me. Look, I've been in sales. I've been in prison. I grew up in New York. So, I could pretty much spot it. And my mother was mentally ill and she was picked on and taken advantage of. And so I've always been raised to defend the defense, people that can't defend themselves, women, children, the mentally ill, especially the mentally ill. And that was I just went bad. I got a coke problem and I started doing illegal things. But so I'll keep it on a positive. Yes, I do have other things coming up. There should be hopefully another show is looking good. I can't say too much about that. I've been offered some movie deals. One of them was playing a jeweler in a mob movie in New York. I do write books now. If anybody wants to support me post incarceration, I would love for you guys to buy my books. And you see one on the screen there. They're on Amazon, official William Steele, or at the website that's some above my head here, WilliamSteeleAuthor.com. You'll find my books. And check out my true crime podcast. It's all over iHeartRadio, and I don't even know all the names of them. We use Buzzsprout, so it distributes them everywhere. And my true crime channel is William Steele True Crime on YouTube. Also, my fan pages for my show, Inmate to Roommate. You can go to Inmate to Roommate Central. I think it's the one that we set up personally that I manage. And then there's other ones out there all over the place. There's like millions of fans and probably tens of thousands of them on these groups. Please look me up on Facebook under William Steele, and you can find the fan groups. And I always keep people apprised of what I'm doing there. So, and with your background, again, I maybe one day want to interview you. With you and Mary, that would be cool. I just want to keep this thing going. I'm glad to help in any way I can. If I can give you as an investigator some insights from the other side, I'm glad to do that. So,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for spending your time with me today, you and Mary. I know Mary's a big part of this, and I would love to have another interview with you, whether it's me on the other end or this way, when there's new developments in some of these cases. Especially this Charles Ray Smith. This is a big one, and I'm
also
really
on the Durst litigation is if I hear anything, because you have lawyers saying, "Oh, be quiet, don't talk about it right now." And I'm trying to talk to people who are my friends, but they're victims. Lawyers have been telling you that for 40 years.
Yeah.
Say do all the interviews you can. Keep heat on this situation. Keep the public spotlight, the floodlight of light sanitizes these situations, because I don't know how these people can live with themselves. They have billions of dollars, and this family suffered and lost so much. They lost not only a loved one, but God knows how much in money chasing these cases down, trying to with investigators and lawyers and God knows what else. They're really good people. The McCormick family is a wonderful family. No answers about what happened to Kathy other than a little bit I could help them with, and maybe somebody else gave them some behind the scenes. But prosecutors are never interested in prosecuting it. They have enough. They have enough to sue who they need to sue and be successful. So let's maybe follow up on that. On the Durst stuff especially. And maybe if something happens with Ghislaine, starts cooperating, because I think that day's coming real soon.
Yeah. I have a feeling she's going to break, so I think it's just a matter of time.
Nobody wants to have 20-year sentence.
Something like that.
Nobody wants to sit in prison 20 years for a federal inmate that needs about 18, and I think she's about 59 now, something like that. So nobody wants to age in prison, especially a woman who's already 50-something years old. She's gonna make a deal. I suspect they'll give her witness protection in like New Zealand or something. They'll cut a deal with another country to take her in. So.
Yeah, that's what I highly suspect too, especially since there are a lot of high up there elites that are involved. That she couldn't just be released back to the public. Obviously, that she would be in a witness protection, but I'm also suspecting and hoping that she'll break. In order to get in that deal, part of that will be giving full disclosure of everything, of everything that she knows, that she's seen, that she's been a part of, and helping with some other, secondary prosecutions, I hope, from that. But I feel like she's going to break, and let's definitely follow up on that, the Maxwell and the Durst. And then if there's anything new with Charles Ray Smith, I'll check out your YouTube and your podcast. I really appreciate everything you and Mary do, and I hope you have a wonderful night. I know it's
thank you.
Evening over there, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you, Laura. It was interesting being, getting to know you and being on your show, and I hope your show starts blowing up. And I ask people, please hit subscribe on my channel, your channel, and just hit that like and subscribe button. I just got out of prison a year ago. I'm not used to any of this, but I guess that's the thing we have to say. Hit subscribe, because that builds our numbers up, and you get credibility, you get more guests, you get to monetize. So there's all these good things that come out of it. And as you grow your channel, yours or mine, we can raise more awareness for victims. And so please hit subscribe, tell people about our channel, share them. And we thank you again. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Bye. Take care.
All right, good night.
Good night.